Relationship red flag. When your partner talks about their future, they use solo language. Okay, what does this sound like? This sounds like I'm with this person and I feel like we are in a dedicated relationship. At least I'm dedicated on my side. And then, my partner has hopes and dreams and they have ideas about what the future contains, right? Oh, they want to go to France or blah, 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 whatever. But you'll notice this language that they use, that when they describe this future that they have or the things that they want to do, they will use language that is entirely solo oriented. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Let's get more specific. It's like in one case, it was, well, yeah, in, a couple years, I'm going to go on this bike tour around Europe, and I'm going to go to this location. I'm going to go along the southern coast of France, and then I'm going to swing down into Spain, and then I'm going to maybe go walk the Compostela de Santiago and whatever. Another example might be the person who's talking about their university future. And I've seen this one happen before where they will go into this meticulous detail about this future that they have when they go to their next stage of education. It might be undergrad or graduate or postdoc or whatever, but they're talking about this future situation where they're like, oh, I'm going to move to Boston and I'm going to enroll at whatever, MIT or something. And I'm going to study blah, blah, blah. I'm going to work with this lab and I'm going to do all these other things. Okay, so you are the partner of this person and you are currently interacting with this person, hopefully face to face. Check my other videos on long distance relationships. And you're in a different geographic location. So here you are, you're in this relationship with this partner and they're talking about this future hope and dream about something that they're going to do in a different geographic area. And they're definitely talking about, I'm going to move to this geographic area and I'm going to do this thing and I am pursuing this dream that I have, right? Maybe that's the simplest way to look at this. It kind of manifests in different ways, but maybe that's the simple way. Okay, so here we are in partnership with a person who is excitedly talking about a hope and dream. That's good. That's awesome. Like, people that have hopes and dreams are definitely green flags, right? People that are lacking hopes and dreams are red flags. Okay, so they've got this excited hope and dream, which is definitely a green flag. But when they describe this future together, well, that's the issue, right? They're describing this future and there's no together in their descriptions. They are telling this story or sharing these hopes and dreams, maybe on social media, maybe hanging out with friends, maybe to their parents. And I've seen this situation. I've been in it a couple times, but I've definitely seen it many times where you're sitting right next to them, right? You're literally sitting at the same booth in the restaurant or at the same couch. And here's this person who's your partner, and they are extolling the amazing story that's going to unfold in their life. And as they describe this story, it's entirely about their own journey, their own accomplishments, the own things they're going to pursue, whatever. And there's a total lack of language that accommodates for the partnership or the togetherness, or even you as the partner. Have you been in this situation? If you have, leave some comments. Like, we'd love to hear some more examples of this. Yeah, that's a red flag. And this one's tricky because, like we said, we want to be seeing people that have meaning and purpose, that have aspirations and drive and a craving to chase the great unknown and the potential amazing life that they could have. Like, that's definitely green flag territory. And that creates all this interesting lifiness to the relationship, is when a person shows up and has that kind of creative, interesting drive. But we need to be watchful for this. I don't want everyone to be super vigilant, but it's just like, let's just say the number of times I've seen this, we're probably at 100% hit rate of those relationships disintegrating shortly, like within the next 6 months or a year. That relationship will come to an end. So that's what I'm basing all this on. I'm not making a judgment on people that are using solo language for their future. That's not it. I'm saying that, like, when we look at the statistical numbers, I don't know if there's been an official study on this. This has been like observation across, say, 100 relationships. When we look at the patterns that are connected to this, we see that those relationships end relatively quickly, and they end with a lot of heartbreak. And why is this? What are the patterns we've seen in this situation? What we see is that in this partnership, we've got the one that is, dreaming of this great future of whatever this thing is that they're going to go do. And then you have the partner who is mostly focused on this relationship right now. And it's like, I adore you, and I adore this relationship, and I like this place that we are, and I want to see this move forward into the future. Great. Also green flag. Now partner says, like, I'm going to go chase the dreams and chase my stars, and I'm going to like hitchhike across China or whatever, right? I'm going to sail around the world. I'm going to do this thing that takes me away from this space geographically. And then what we see, or what I've seen, I guess, is that eventually this partner here says to the other one, it's like, where am I in that story? You're sharing this amazing dream of a future, but I don't see or hear anything coming from you that includes us or me. Am I in this picture that you have? I've done that, and I've seen many other people do that. And then the next thing we see is this partner is now suddenly flustered, and there's like, oh no, of course, and it begins to reveal, again, this is not something that's entirely unhealthy, and I don't want any shame or blame coming from this. It's more like a trick of the mind, that the one that's driven to go is so wrapped up in that dream and that fantasy and the preparing for it and then all that stuff. It's a very self-oriented focus on this forward momentum towards this goal that they have. And now, of course, a lot of these people will feel shame by admitting that, no, I'm not taking you into account. Like, you're not part of that dream, right? There are some that will just, they won't be able to admit that. Others will. And the ones that can, again, green flag, because they have got self-awareness. They're able to communicate that, and they're able to hold space, hopefully, for the disappointment that might bring. So that's green flag territory. So then ride that relationship out as long as you want. But what I've seen many times is these people that, like, they're the truest aspect of this dynamic that they're involved in is that they are not focused on the relationship. They're not taking partner into account, and they're not interested in making any consolation for that. And I've seen cases where this one here, the goer, the go-getter, whatever, is literally sitting with partner and sharing this excitement that they have for this amazing dream, and like, oh, this is so amazing, I'm going to go do this thing, and I just got an acceptance letter and blah, 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 whatever. And the partner's like, that's great, but like, where am I in that picture? And then the go-getter is just like, what? I don't know. Like, why do you drag me down? Like, can't you just be happy for me? Like, I'm super excited about this. And now you're just kind of like bringing in all this negative energy and blah, 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 and so there's this little flip around thing, right? In that particular case, we continued to pursue and ask questions and explore the internal world of this go-getter, and you find out that this go-getter did not have any consolation for partnership and was just kind of making assumptions. That's what eventually was shared. I just assumed that you would just like come along with me or go do your own thing. I'm going to be, what was it? I think it was a 6-month or 1-year internship on the East Coast of America, and they were currently living on the West Coast. And I think what that person said to the partner was that it was just like, oh, I just assumed that you would just go do your own thing. And now partner, who's kind of, motivated for this relationship, is like, oh, well, I don't actually have my own thing. So that's one, that's actually on the red flag territory. But they're also just like, well, then what happens with this relationship? And it's like, are we, if we're just going to part at that time period, which I'm okay with, it'd be nice to kind of know this ahead of time. And then it's just like, oh, I didn't want to tell you. And then you've got this shame and guilt thing going on. I hope I'm painting a picture that's relatively clear for people. I mean, for some of you, this is going to be like, what is he talking about? I've never seen this happen. Both people should have their own hopes and dreams and be driven in separate directions. And if they're alongside each other, then great. And if they're not, then part ways. I totally agree with that. What I'm sharing and the thing that I kind of want to bring awareness to is that if you are the person that is kind of settled and not driven for some big goal, maybe you've accomplished it. Maybe it's just like, I worked long and hard to get to this place where I've got a stable foundation and I've got a home and I've got a job that I like and I've got a community that I interact with and I really like it here, right? And then you meet someone and now you're kind of wrapped up in this relationship, and then that partner is now talking about this future where they're doing their own thing. It's like, if that's the situation you find yourself in, prepare yourself. Like, it's not so much a red flag for that person per se. This is no judgment of them, because chasing your hopes and dreams is awesome. It's that it's more like a red flag for the future of that relationship, because the number of times I've seen that end quickly and usually with a lot of emotional drama because expectations were out of alignment. Someone had a plan that they were too ashamed or resistant to share with partner. And so the communication broke down in that. And then they've got all this energy moving in themselves. And then they go off. And the partner's like, wait, this what? Right? This is a surprise to me. And you didn't communicate it. And I trusted you. And this was like, what's going on here? And now that I'm saying this, I realize this is almost identical to the dynamic that happens with basically one person has decided the relationship is ending and the other person doesn't know it yet, which is most of the time. The vast majority of relationships, like vast, 99% of relationships have a moment, because most relationships end, right? It is a small percentage of relationships that actually go a distance over time. So the vast number of relationships end, and of those, the vast, probably 99% of the relationships that end because one person wants it to end or needs it to end, and then they begin the emotional processing inside to separate themselves, to bring kind of themselves to a point of closure. They're already grieving. They are doing what they can to get themselves to a place where they are okay with this relationship coming to an end. And then they're too scared to tell their partner because they legitimately care about this person, or they're terrified of them. Hopefully it's the first one. They legitimately care about this person and they don't want to create heartbreak for this person that they've been bonded with for some period of time, and they have legitimate caring feelings for them. They don't want to create heartbreak. And so they're like, what do I do? But I know this is not working. I know this is not where I want to be, but what can I do? I need to end it. I need to break their heart. And I hate myself for doing that. Not all, of course, but many. Many of us have struggled with that. And so this dynamic is very similar, right? It's just that when one partner is talking about a bike tour or a new job or a, appointment or an opening of a new lab at a university or whatever, right? When they're talking about something career driven, it's socially acceptable to kind of talk about that and share openly that I've got this amazing thing that's in my future, right? And they are already moving that direction emotionally and mentally. And if you're the partner that's on the other side of that and you see this behavior, prepare yourself. This is an appropriate time to start a conversation and to have boundaries. Always appropriate to have boundaries, but this is particularly appropriate. This is an appropriate time just to say, hey, partner, I've heard you talking about this great dream you have, and I'm interested in knowing more about it. And I'm interested in understanding from your point of view, how does this partnership fit into that? And it's completely okay and acceptable for you to say it doesn't. And I would just like to understand that so that I can begin planning for my future and I can begin the process of emotional grieving if that's something that I need to do. And now we move on to another situation, which is like, if you communicate that like so in such healthy, present, I-oriented statements, and then partner becomes reactive, well, that's a different red flag. We can talk about that differently. Because see, it's socially acceptable to talk about it. Basically, this is the future dreams that I'm doing that are after I end this relationship and I'm going to move on and go do that other thing. That's socially acceptable. But it's not socially acceptable to literally sit with your partner in the booth at the restaurant or on the couch with a family and be talking about the next relationship you're going to have after I'm done with this one. That's not socially acceptable, right? That's, people use the term disrespect or shameful or whatever. I mean, there's a whole host of negative adjectives we would use for that person. And it makes sense. So when you really think of it, these are kind of the same thing. It's basically you're in a partnership and you begin to see language or behavior or whatever that shows that your partner is focusing, majority of their focus is narrowing to this other thing that is outside the bounds of this relationship that we share together. And when that happens, you can choose any path you like, right? That's up to you. But I'm here to tell you that when you see that kind of behavior, it's okay to be like, something here doesn't make sense. It's okay to say, hey, partner, I'm feeling confused about what I'm seeing here. Can you help me understand it? It's okay to say, this is new information for me. And I'm going to communicate a boundary, which is in the future, if it looks like, the perception that I have inside myself is that you are focused on another dream and going another direction, I'm going to gracefully exit this relationship. I can wish you the best and I can share how much I care about you and how much gratitude I have for the good times we had together. But if my goal is to maintain a long-term, stable, healthy relationship, that partner's behavior is not in line with that. And it's okay to bring that to an end. In fact, if you're finding that your values are not aligned in that way, I highly recommend that you bring it to an end. I strongly encourage you to communicate that with partner and just say, this situation is no longer in alignment with my goals and the kind of relationship that I want to have. And so I'm going to exit this as gracefully as I can with as much compassion and curiosity and love as I'm capable of for you. And I can wish you the best. And I'm thankful for the times we had together. But I need to move on, because staying around another 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, whatever, when this person is clearly moving away, that's just asking for more pain and misery. And then people will say, well, what if there's a child involved? Which is a fantastic question. What if there's a child involved? That kind of brings us to a real sticky point. Because if you have a child together with this person, you're kind of bonded permanently. There's kind of a permanent bond that you will always have some point of connection with that person. And if they are clearly moving away and prioritizing other things in this life and not really integrating this relationship and partnership and the partner's identity or reality or whatever, like the totality of you, they are not weaving that into their story about their future life. That means that they're approaching this future in a completely self-oriented manner. They're thinking about themselves, their own accomplishments, their own self, their own hopes and dreams, their own whatever. And unfortunately, we see this very common. And that person, of course, after the breakup, people will be like, wow, he was so selfish, or she was so self-oriented, or whatever. And then they'll use the narcissist word and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense, right? They're probably not a clinically diagnosed narcissist, but they are definitely operating from a very selfish place and very, very self-focused. And that's, really on the total scale of things, it's okay to be self-focused. It's okay to be selfish sometimes. But if you are hooked into a relationship, why? To get some kind of need met. Maybe it's like validation or sex or company or whatever. And then you're kind of dragging this other person along and be like, keep being with me so that I don't feel alone, or so that, I get the whatever it is that I want. But they're looking out that direction and chasing after this other thing and be like, no, I'm going to drag you with me. That's a very toxic situation. And I'll tell you, I have worked with people who eventually we realize they were the child in that dynamic. And the parent, mother or father, happens for both, is desperately chasing after something, the next job, the next validation, the next score, the next, fix, whatever. And they're just dragging this child along through one chaotic situation after another as that person is, and it's just like, that is super toxic. And it has long-term negative consequences for the children and partners and spouses of those people. And so it makes sense, if you're seeing that kind of language, that kind of behavior, to call it out. You're not crazy. You see what's going on, honor that, and then begin the process of bringing it to a graceful close. Because sometimes what's needed, and I've seen this happen a couple times, is that bringing it to a graceful close is an establishment of a mega boundary. You're just like, this is not in alignment with me. This is not what I want. I'm going to bring this to an end without big emotional drama, right? It's just like, I'm going to be sad. I will grieve this loss, and I'm going to step away because this is not in alignment with my values. And then you step away. That's a very clear, self-love oriented boundary that you are doing for yourself. And I super applaud that. And then what we see happen sometimes is that partner is chasing after this goal, and then suddenly you're gone, and they're like, wait, what? And they're like, but there was all this wonderful things that we had when we were together, and I miss them now. And then it kind of puts them into a moment where because see, oftentimes that future that they're chasing is dream fantasy land. Not always, but sometimes. And when you actually step away and remove yourself from their life, sometimes that kind of punches them into this place where they have to evaluate what they actually want. And they're just like, wait a second, I really wanted to move to Boston to do this thing and work at this lab and blah, 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 and all that other kind of stuff and start this new life. And oh my God, that's so exciting. But it's like, now you're gone and I miss you. And it's just like, and then they kind of got to do this double take and look back and forth and say, actually, maybe there's another way we can do this. And then they will retreat and attempt to reconnect and then be like, okay, I still want to chase that dream. Great. How can we work together? How can I weave you into that story? That's green flags all over. That's like a person who's reached self-awareness or has a high self-awareness, and they were chasing this fantasy, and then the sudden boundary that you established in protection of self kind of shakes them a little bit to realize just how selfish they were being, and they say, oh yeah, I was. And then they're going to come back and then reconcile and repair the rupture, and then take this new information and actually try to weave it back together in a healthy way. That's green flags all over. But that won't happen unless you make the call. That won't happen. That whole process cannot begin unless you have the courage to say, this does not align with me and I'm going to step away. And then you actually step away. I hope this has been helpful for any of you out there that are facing these kinds of situations. I wish you the best. I believe in you. If you got any more comments or, leave them in below or above or wherever this video strikes you. And if you want help with this kind of situation, please reach out to me or someone like me. We can help. All right. Peace.